A welcome visit with a friendly stay, and through the Arcadian kingdom took his way. And then past a boy the callow down began to shade my chin and call me first a man. I saw the shining train with vast delight, and Priam's goodly person pleased my sight. But great Anchises far above the rest, with awful wonder fired my youthful breast. I longed to join in friendship's holy bands, our mutual hearts, and plight our mutual hands. I first accosted him, I sued, I sought, and with a loving force to Phaeneus brought. He gave me, when at length constrained to go, a Lycian quiver and a Gnossian bow, a vest embroidered glorious to behold, and 2 rich bridles with their bits of gold, which my son's coursers in obedience hold. The league you ask I offer as you write, and when tomorrow's sun reveals the light, with swift supplies you shall be sent away. Now celebrate with us this solemn day, whose holy rites admit no long delay. Honour our annual feast, and take your seat, with friendly welcome at a homely treat. Thus having said, the bowls removed for fear, the youths replaced, and soon restored the cheer. On sods of turf he set the soldiers round, a maple throne raised higher from the ground received the Trojan chief, and o'er the bed a lion's shaggy hide for ornament they spread. The loaves were served in canisters, the wine in bowls. The priest renewed the rites divine. Broil'd entrails are their flood, and beef's continued shine. But when the rage of hunger was repress'd, thus spoke Evander to his royal guest: "These rites, these altars, and this feast, O king, from no vain fears of superstition spring, or blind devotion, or from blinder chance, or heated zeal, or brutal ignorance, but sav'd from danger with a grateful sense. The labours of a god we recompense. See from afar yon rock that mates the sky, about whose feet such heaps of rubbish lie, such indigested ruin, bleak and bare. How desert now it stands exposed in air! It was once a robber's den, enclosed around with living stone, and deep beneath the ground the monster Cacus, more than half a beast, this hold impervious to the sun possess'd. The pavement ever foul with human gore, heads and their mangled members hung the door. Vulcan this plague begot, and like his sire, black clouds he belch'd, and flakes of livid fire. Time, long expected, eas'd us of our load, and brought the needful presence of a god. The avenging force of Hercules from Spain arrived in triumph from Geiron slain. Thrice livid the giant, and thrice livid in vain, his prize the lowing herds Alcides drove near Tiber's bank to graze the shady grove. Allured with hope of plunder and intent, by force to rob, by fraud to circumvent, the brutal Cacus, as by chance they stray'd, 4 oxen thence, and 4 fair kine convey'd. And lest the printed footsteps might be seen, he dragg'd them backwards to his rocky den. The tracks averse a lying notice gave, and led the searcher backward from the cave. Meantime the herdsman hero shifts his place, to find fresh pasture and untrodden grass. The beasts who missed their mates filled all around with bellowing, and the rocks restored the sound. One heifer, who had heard her love complain, roar'd from the cave, and made the project vain. Alcides found the fraud, with rage he shook, and toss'd about his head his knotted oak. Swift as the winds or Scythian arrows' flight, he clomb with eager haste the aerial height. Then first we saw the monster mend his pace, fear his eyes, and paleness in his face. Confess'd the god's approach, trembling he springs, as terror had increased his feet with wings. nor stayed for stairs, but down the depth he threw his body. On his back the door he drew, the door a rib of living rock with pains. His father hewed it out and bound it with iron chains. He broke the heavy links the mountains closed, and bars and levers to his foe opposed. The wretch had hardly made his dungeons fast, the fierce avenger came with bounding haste, surveyed the mouth of the forbidden hold, and here and there his raging eyes he rolled. He gnashed his teeth, and thrice he compassed round with winged speed the circuit of the ground. Thrice at the cavern's mouth he pulled in vain, and panting thrice desisted from his pain. A pointed flinted rock, all bare and black, grew gibbons from behind the mountain's back. Owls, ravens, all ill omens of the night, here built their nests, and hither winged their flight. The leaning head hung, threatening o'er the flood, and nodded to the left the hero stood, adverse with planted feet, and from the right tugged at the solid stone with all his might. Thus heaved the fixed foundation of the rock, gave way, heav'n echoed at the rattling shock. Tumbling it choked the flood on either side, the banks leap backward and the streams divide. The sky shrunk upward with unusual dread, and trembling Tiber divide beneath his bed. The court of Cacus stands revealed to sight, the cavern glares with new admitted light. So the pent vapours with rumbling sound heave from below and rend the hollow ground. A sounding floor succeeds, and from on high the gods with hate beheld the nether sky. The ghosts repine at violated night, and curse the invading sun, and sicken at the sight. The graceless monster, caught in open day, enclosed and in despair to fly away, howls horrible from underneath, and fills his hollow palace with unmanly yells. The hero stands above, and from afar plies him with darts and stones and distant war. He from his nostrils huge mouth expires, black clouds of smoke amidst his father's fires, gathering with each repeated blast the night, to make uncertain aim and erring sight. The wrathful god then plunges from above, and where in thickest waves the sparkles drove their lights, and wades through fumes and gropes his way, half singed, half stifled, till he grasps his prey. The monster spewing fruitless flames he found, he squeezed his throat, he writhed his neck around, and in a knot his crippled members bound. Then from their sockets tore his burning eyes, rolled on a heap the breathless robber lies. The doors unbarred receive the rushing day, and thorough lights disclose the ravish'd prey. The bulls redeem'd breathe open air again, next by the feet they drag him from his den. The wondering neighbourhood with glad surprise behold his shagged breast, his giant size, his mouth that flames no more, and his extinguished eyes. From that auspicious day with rites divine, we worship at the hero's holy shrine. Potitius first ordained these annual vows, as priests we added the Pinarian house, who raised this altar in the sacred shade, where honours ever due for ever shall be paid. For these deserts and this high virtue shown, we warlike youth your heads with garlands crown. Fill high the goblets with a sparkling flood, and with deep draughts invoke our common god. This said, a double wreath Evander twined, and poplars black and white his temples bind. Then brims his ample bowl with like design. The rest invoke the gods with sprinkled wine. Meantime the sun descended from the skies, and the bright evening star began to rise. And now the priest, Potitius at their head, in skins of beasts involved the long procession led. held high the flaming tapers in their hands, as custom had prescribed their holy bands. Then with the second course the tables load, and with full chargers offer to the god. The Salii sing, and cense his altars round. With Saban smoke their heads with poplar bound. One choir of old, another of the young, to dance and bear the burthen of the song. The lay records the labours and the praise, and all the immortal acts of Hercules. First, how the mighty babe, when swathed in bands, the serpent strangled with his infant hands. Then, as in years and matchless force he grew, the Oechalian walls and Trojan overthrew. Besides 1,000 hazards they relate, procured by Juno and Eurystheus' hate. Thy hands unconquered hero could subdue the cloud-born Centaurs and the monstrous crew. Nor thy resistless arms the bull withstood, nor the roaring terror of the wood. The triple porter of the Stygian sea, with lolling tongue lay fawning at thy feet, and seized with fear for goddess mangled me. The infernal waters tremble at thy sight. The god no face of danger could affright, no huge Typhus, nor the unnumbered snake, increased with hissing heads in Lerna's lake. Hail, Jove's undoubted son, an added grace to heav'n and the great author of thy race. Receive the grateful off'rings which we pay, and smile propitious on thy solemn day. In numbers thus they sung above the rest. The den and death of Cacus crown'd the feast. The woods to hollow vales convey the sound, the vales to hills, and hills the notes rebound. The rites perform'd, the cheerful train retire. Betwixt young Pallas and his aged sire, the Trojan pass'd the city to survey, and pleasing talk beguil'd the tedious way. The stranger cast around his curious eyes, new objects viewing still with new surprise. With greedy joy enquires of various things, and acts and monuments of ancient kings. Then thus the founder of the Roman towers: these woods were first the seat of sylvan powers, of nymphs and fauns and salvage men who took their birth from trunks of trees and stubborn oak. No laws they knew, no manners, nor the care of labouring oxen or the shining share, nor arts of gain, nor what they gained to spare. Their exercise, the chase, the running flood, supplied their thirst, the trees supplied their food. Then Saturn came, who fled the power of Jove, robbed of his realms and banished from above. The men dispersed on hills, to towns he brought, and laws ordained and civil customs taught. And Latium called the land where safe he lay from his unduteous son and his usurping sway. With his mild empire peace and plenty came, and hence the golden times did read their name. A more degenerate and discolour'd age succeeded this, with avarice and rage. The Ausonians then, and bold Sicanians came, and Saturn's empire often changed the name. Then kings, gigantic Tybris, and the rest, with arbitrary sway the land oppress'd. For Tiber's flood was Albula before, till from the tyrant's fate his name it bore. I last arrived, driving from my native home, by fortune's power and fate's resistless doom. Long tossed on seas, I sought this happy land, warned by my mother nymph and called by heaven's command. End of Book 8, Part 1. Read by Lars Rolander. Book 8, Part 2 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. The Aeneid by Publius Vergilius Maro. Translated by John Dryden. Book 8, Arcadian Allies, Part 2. Thus walking on, he spoke and shewed the gate, since called Carmental by the Roman state, where stood an altar sacred to the name of old Carmenta, the prophetic dame, who to her son foretold the Aenean race, sublime in fame and Rome's imperial place. Then shews the forest, which in after times fierce Romulus for perpetrated crimes a sacred refuge made, with this the shrine, where Pan below the rock had rites divine. Then tells of Argus' death, his murdered guest, whose grave and tomb his innocence attest. Thence to steep Tarpeian rock he leads, now roofed with gold, then thatched with homely reeds. A reverent fear, such superstition reigns among the rude, even then possessed the swains. Some god they knew, what god they could not tell, did there amidst the sacred horror dwell. The Arcadian thought him Jove, and said they saw the mighty Thunderer with majestic awe, who took his shield and dealt his bolts around, and scattered tempests on the teeming ground. Then saw two heaps of ruins, once they stood, two stately towns on either side the flood. Saturnius and young Nicholas remains, and either place the founder's name retains. Discoursing thus together they drew sword, where poor Evander kept his country court. They viewed the ground of Rome's litigious hall, once oxen load where now the lawyers call. Then stooping through the narrow gate they pressed, when thus the king bespoke his Trojan guest. Mean as it is this palace and this door, received Alcides then a conqueror. Dare to be poor, accept our homely food, which feasted him, and emulate a god. Then underneath a lowly roof he led the weary prince, and laid him on a bed. Then stuffing leaves with hides of bears o'erspread. Now night had shed her silver dews around, and with her sable wings embraced the ground. When love's fair goddess, anxious for her son, new tumults raising, and new wars begun, couched with her husband in his golden bed, with these alluring words invokes his aid, and that her pleasing speech his mind may move, inspires each accent with the charms of love. While cruel fate conspired with Grecian powers to level with the ground the Trojan towers, I'd ask not aid the unhappy to restore, nor did the succour of thy skill implore, nor urge the labours of my lord in vain, a sinking empire longer to sustain. Though much I owed to Priam's house, and more the dangers of Aeneas did deplore. But now, by Jove's command and fate's decree, his race is doom'd to reign in Italy. With humble suit I beg thy needful art, O still propitious power that rules my heart. A mother kneels a suppliant for her son, by Thetis and Aurora thou wert won, to forge impenetrable shields and grace, with fated arms a less illustrious race. Behold what haughty nations are combined against the relics of the Phrygian kind. With fire and sword my people to destroy, and conquer Venus twice in conquering Troy. She said, and straight her arms of snowy hue about her unresolving husband threw. Her soft embraces soon infused desire, his bones and marrow sudden warmth inspire. And all the godhead feels the wonted fire. Not half so swift the rattling thunder flies, or forky lightning flash along the skies. The goddess, proud of her successful wiles, and conscious of her form, in secret smiles. Then thus the power obnoxious to her charms, panting and half dissolving in her arms: "Why seek you reasons for a cause so just, Or your own beauties, or my love distrust? Long since had you requir'd my helpful hand, The artificer, and art you might command, To labour arms for Troy; nor Jove nor fate Confin'd their empire to so short a date. And if you now desire new wars to wage, My skill I promise, and my pains engage. Whatever melting metals can conspire, Or breathing bellows, or the forming fire, Is freely yours. Your anxious fears remove, And think no task is difficult to love." Trembling he spoke, and eager of her charms, He snatch'd the willing goddess to his arms, Till in her lap infus'd he lay possess'd Of full desire, and sunk to pleasing rest. Now, when the night her middle race had broke, And his first slumber had refresh'd the god, The time when early housewives leave the bed, When living embers on the hearth they spread, Supply the lamp, and call the maids to rise, With yawning mouths, and with half-open'd eyes. They ply the distaff by the winking light, And to their daily labour add their night. Thus frugally they earn their children's bread, And uncorrupted keep the nuptial bed. Not less concern'd, nor at a later hour, Rose from his downy couch the forging Pow'r. Sacred to Vulcan's name, an isle there lay, Betwixt Sicilia's coast and Lipare, Rais'd high on smoking rocks, and deep below, In hollow caves, the fires of Aetna glow. The Cyclops here their heavy hammers deal; Loud strokes, and hissings of tormented steel, Are heard around; the boiling waters roar, And smoky flames thro' fuming tunnels soar. Hither the father of the fire by night Thro' the brown air precipitates his flight. On their eternal anvils here we found The brethren beating, and the blows go round. A load of pointless thunder now there lies Before their hands, to ripen for the skies. These darts for angry Jove they daily cast, Consum'd on mortals with prodigious waste. 3 rays of writhen rain, of fire 3 more, Of winged southern winds and cloudy storm. As many parts the dreadful mixture frame, And fears are added, and avenging flame. Inferior ministers for Mars repair His broken axle trees and blunted war, And send him forth again with furbish'd arms, To wake the lazy war with trumpets' loud alarms. The rest refresh the scaly snake that fold The shield of Pallas, and renew their gold. Full on the crest of Gorgon's head they place, With eyes that roll in death, and with distorted face. "My sons," said Vulcan, "set your task aside. Your strength and master skill must now be tried. Arms for a hero forge, arms that require Your force, your speed, and all your forming fire." He said; they set their former work aside, And their new toils with eager haste divide. A flood of molten silver, brass, and gold, And deadly steel, in the large furnace roll'd. Of this their artful hands a shield prepare, Alone sufficient to sustain the war. 7 orbs within a spacious round they close, One stirs the fire, and one the bellows blows. The hissing steel is in the smithy drown'd, The grot with beaten anvils groans around. By turns their arms advance in equal time, By turns their hands descend, and hammers chime. They turn the glowing mass with crooked tongs; The fiery work proceeds with rustic songs. While at the Limnian god's command they urge their labours thus, and ply the Aeolian forge, the cheerful morn salutes Evander's eyes, and songs of chirping birds invite to rise. He leaves his lowly bed, his buskins meet, above his ankles sandals sheathe his feet. He sets his trusty sword upon his side, and o'er his shoulder throws a panther's hide. To menial dogs before the master press'd, thus clad and guarded thus, he seeks his kingly guest. Mindful of promis'd aid, he mends his pace, but meets Aeneas in the middle space. Young Pallas did his father's steps attend, and true Achates waited on his friend. They join their hands, a secret seat they choose. The Arcadian first their former talk renews. Undaunted prince, I never can believe the Trojan empire lost while you survive. Command the assistance of a faithful friend, but feeble are the succours I can send. Our narrow kingdom here the Tiber bounds, that other side the Latian state surrounds. Insults our walls, and wastes our fruitful grounds, but mighty nations I prepare to join their arms with yours, and aid your just design. You come as by your better genius sent, and fortune seems to favour your intent. Not far from hence there stands a hilly town, of ancient buildings and of high renown, torn from the Tuscans by the Lydian race, who gave the name of Caere to the place. Once Agelina called, it flourished long, in pride of wealth and warlike people strong, till cursed Mezentius in a fatal hour assumed the crown with arbitrary power. What words can paint those execrable times, the subjects' sufferings and the tyrant's crimes? That blood, those murders, O ye gods, replace on his own head and on his impious race. The living and the dead at his command were coupled face to face and hand to hand, till choked with stench in loath'd embraces tied, the ling'ring wretches pined away and died. Thus plunged in ills, and meditating more, the people's patience tired no longer bore. The raging monster, but with arms beset, his house and vengeance and destruction threat. They fire his place, while the flame ascends, they force his guards, and execute his friends. He cleaves the crowd, and, favour'd by the night, to Turnus' friendly court directs his flight. By just revenge the Tuscans set on fire, with arms their king to punishment require. Their num'rous troops now muster'd on the strand, my counsel shall submit to your command. Their navy swarms upon the coasts, they cry to hoist their anchors, but the gods deny. An ancient augur, skill'd in future fate, with these foreboding words restrains their hate. Ye brave in arms, ye Lydian blood, the flow'r of Tuscan youth, and choice of all their pow'r, whom just revenge against Mezentius arms, to seek your tyrant's death by lawful arms. Know this, no native of our land may lead this powerful people seek a foreign head. Awed with these words in camps they still abide, and wait with longing looks their promis'd guide. Tarchon, the Tuscan chief, to me has sent their crown and every regal ornament. The people join their own with his desire, and all my conduct as their king require. But the chill blood that creeps within my veins, and age and listless limbs unfit for pains, and a soul conscious of its own decay, have forced me to refuse imperial sway. My Pallas were more fit to mount the throne, and should, but he's a Sabine mother's son, and half a native, but in you combine a manly vigour and a foreign line. Where fate and smiling fortune shew the way, pursue the ready path to sovereign sway. The staff of my declining days, my son, shall make your good or ill success his own. In fighting fields from you shall learn to dare, and serve the hard apprenticeship of war. Your matchless courage and your conduct view, and early shall begin to admire and copy you. Besides 200 horse he shall command, though few a warlike and well-chosen band. These in my name are listed, and my son, as many more has added in his own. Scarce had he said, Achates and his guest, with downcast eyes, their silent grief expressed, who, short of succours and in deep despair, shook at the dismal prospect of the war. But his bright mother from a breaking cloud, to cheer her issue, thunder'd thrice aloud. Thrice forky lightning flash'd along the sky, and Tyrrhene trumpets thrice were heard on high. Then gazing up, repeated peals they hear, and in a heav'n serene, refulgent arms appear, reddening the skies and glittering all around. The temper'd metals clash, and yield a silver sound. The rest stood trembling, struck with awe divine; Aeneas only, conscious to the sign, presaged th' event, and joyful view'd above th' accomplish'd promise of the Queen of Love. Then to th' Arcadian king this prodigy: "Dismiss your fear, belongs alone to me. Heav'n calls me to the war; th' expected sign Is giv'n of promis'd aid, and arms divine. My goddess mother, whose indulgent care Foresaw the dangers of the growing war, this omen gave, when bright Vulcanian arms, Fated from force of steel by Stygian charms, Suspended shone on high. She then foreshow'd approaching fights, and fields to float in blood. Turnus shall dearly pay for faith forsworn, and corpse, and swords, and shields on Tiber borne Shall choke his flood. Now sound the loud alarms, and Latian troops, prepare your perjur'd arms." He said, and rising from his homely throne, The solemn rites of Hercules begun, And on his altars waked the sleeping fires. Then cheerful to his household gods retires. Their offers chosen she, th' Arcadian king, And Trojan youth the same oblations bring. Next of his men and ships he makes review, Draws out the best and ablest of the crew. Down with the falling stream the refuse run, To raise with joyful news his drooping son. Steeds are prepar'd to mount the Trojan band, Who wait their leader to the Tyrrhene land. A sprightly courser, fairer than the rest, The king himself presents his royal guest. A lion's hide his back and limbs enfold, Precious with studded work and paws of gold. Fame thro' the little city spreads aloud The intended march amid the fearful crowd. The matrons beat their breasts, dissolve in tears, And double their devotion in their fears. The war at hand appears with more affright, And rises every moment to the sight. Then old Evander, with a close embrace, Strain'd his departing friend, and tears o'erflow his face. "Would Heav'n," said he, "my strength and youth recall, Such as I was beneath Praeneste's wall! Then, when I made the foremost foes retire, And set whole heaps of conquer'd shields on fire; When Euryalus in single fight I slew, Whom with 3 lives Feronia did endue; And thrice I sent him to the Stygian shore, Till the last ebbing soul return'd no more. Such, if I stood renew'd, not these alarms, Nor death should rend me from my Pallas' arms, Nor proud Mezentius thus unpunish'd boast His rapes and murders on the Tuscan coast. Ye gods and mighty Jove, in pity bring Relief, and hear a father and a king. If fate and you reserve these eyes to see my son return with peace and victory. If the lov'd boy shall bless his father's sight, if we shall meet again with more delight, then draw my life in length, let me sustain, in hopes of his embrace, the worst of pain. But if your hard decrees, which, oh, I dread, have doom'd to death his undeserving head, this, oh, this very moment let me die, while hopes and fears in equal balance lie. While yet possess'd of all his youthful charms, I strain him close within these aged arms, before that fatal news my soul shall wound. He said, and swooning sunk upon the ground. His servants bore him off, and softly laid his languish'd limbs upon his homely bed. The horsemen march, the gates are opened wide, Aeneas at their head, Achates by his side. Next these, the Trojan leaders rode along, last follows in the rear the Arcadians throng. Young Pallas shone conspicuous o'er the rest, gilded his arms, embroider'd was his breast. So from the seas exerts his radiant head, the star by whom the lights of heav'n are led. Shakes from his rosy locks the pearly dews, dispels the darkness, and the day renews. The trembling wives the walls and turrets crowd, and follow with their eyes the dusty cloud, which winds disperse by fits, and shew from far the blaze of arms and shields and shining war. The troops drawn up in beautiful array, o'er heathy plains pursue the ready way. Repeated peals of shouts are heard around, the neighing coursers answer to the sound, and shake with horny hoofs the solid ground. A greensward shade, for long religion known, stands by the streams that wash the Tuscan town, encompassed round with gloomy hills above, which add a holy horror to the crowd. The first inhabitants of Grecian blood that sacred forest to Silvanus vow'd, the guardian of their flocks and fields, and pay their due devotions on his annual day. Not far from hence, along the river side, in tents secure the Tuscan troops abide. By Tarchon led, now from a rising ground, Aeneas cast his wondering eyes around, and all the Tyrrhene army had in sight, stretched on the spacious plain from left to right. Thither his warlike train the Trojan led, refresh'd his men, and wearied horses fed. Meantime the mother goddess, crown'd with charms, breaks through the clouds and brings the fated arms. Within a winding vale she finds her son, on the cool river's banks retired alone. She shews her heavenly form without disguise, and gives herself to his desiring eyes. Behold, she said, perform'd in every part, my promise made and Vulcan's labour'd art. Now see, secure, the Latian Aeneid, and the haughty Turnus to the fields defy. She said, and having first her son embraced, the radiant arms beneath an oak she placed. Proud of the gift, he rolled his greedy sight around the work, and gazed with vast delight. He lifts, he turns, he poises, and admires the crested helm that vomits radiant fires. His hands the fatal sword and corslet hold, one keen with tempered steel, one stiff with gold, both ample, flaming both, and beamy bright. So shines a cloud when edged with adverse light. He shakes the pointed spear, and longs to try the plated cuishes on his manly thigh, but most admires the shield's mysterious mould, and Roman triumphs rising on the gold. For these emboss'd the heav'nly smith had wrought, not in the rolls of future fate untaught, the wars in order, and the race divine of warriors issuing from the Julian line. The cave of Mars was dress'd with mossy greens, there by the wolf were laid the martial twins. Intrepid on her swelling dugs they hung, the foster dam loll'd out her fawning tongue. They suck'd secure, while bending back her head, she lick'd their tender limbs, and form'd them as they fed. Not far from thence new Rome appears with games, projected for the rape of Sabine dames. The pit resounds with shrieks, a war succeeds, for breach of public faith and unexampled deeds. Here for revenge the Sabine troops contend, the Romans there with arms the prey defend. Wearied with tedious war, at length they cease, and both the kings and kingdoms plight the peace. The friendly chiefs before Jove's altar stand, both arm'd with each a charger in his hand. A fatted sow for sacrifice is led, with imprecations on the perjured head. Near this the traitor Metius stretch'd between, for fiery steeds is dragg'd along the green. By Tullus' doom the brambles drink his blood, and his thorn limbs are left the vulture's food. There Porsena to Rome proud Tarquin brings, and would by force restore the banish'd kings. One tyrant for his fellow tyrant fights, the Roman youth assert their native rights. Before the town the Tuscan army lies, to win by famine or by fraud surprise. Their king, half threat'ning, half disdaining stood, while cockles broke the bridge and stemm'd the flood. The captive maids there tempt the raging tide, scrap'd from their chains with Cloelia for their guide. High on a rock heroic Manlius stood, to guard the temple and the temple's god. Then Rome was poor, and there you might behold the palace thatch'd with straw, now roofed with gold. The silver goose before the shining gate there flew, and by her cackles saved the state. She told the Gauls' approach, the approaching Gauls, obscure in night, ascend and seize the walls. The gold dissembled well their yellow hair, and golden chains on their white necks they wear. Gold are their vests, long Alpine spears they wield, and their left arm sustains a length of shield. Hard by, the leaping Salian priests advance, and naked through the streets the mad Luperci dance. In caps of wool the targets dropp'd from heav'n, her modest matrons in soft litters driven. To pay their vows in solemn pomp appear, and odorous gums in their chaste hands they bear. Far hence remov'd, the Stygian seats are seen, pains of the damn'd and punish'd Catiline. Hung on a rock the traitor, and around the Furies hissing from the nether ground. Apart from these, the happy souls he draws, and Cato's Holy Ghost dispensing laws. Betwixt the quarters flows a golden sea, but foaming surges there in silver play. The dancing dolphins with their tails divide the glittering waves, and cut the precious tide. Amid the main two mighty fleets engage, their brazen beaks opposed with equal rage. Actium surveys the well-disputed prize, Leucata's watery plain with foamy billows fries. Young Caesar on the stern in armour bright, here leads the Roman and their gods to fight. His beamy temples shoot their flames afar, and over his head is hung the Julian star. Agrippa seconds him with prosperous gales, and with propitious gods his foes assails. A naval crown that binds his manly brows, the happy fortune of the fight foreshows. Ranged on the line opposed, Antonius brings barbarian aids and troops of eastern kings. The Arabian near, and Bactrians from afar, of tongues discordant and a mingled war. And rich in gaudy robes amidst the strife, his ill fate follows him, the Egyptian wife. Moving they fight with oars and forky prows, the froth is gather'd, and the water glows. It seems as if the Cyclades again were rooted up and justled in the main, or floating mountains meet, such is the fierce encounter of the fleet. Fireballs are thrown and pointed javelins fly, the fields of Neptune take the purple dye. The queen herself, amidst the loud alarms, with cymbals toss'd her fainting soldiers warms. Fool as she was, who had not yet divin'd her cruel fate, nor saw the snakes behind. Her country gods, the monsters of the sky, great Neptune, Pallas, and Love's queen defy. The dog Anubis barks, but barks in vain, nor longer dares oppose th' ethereal train. Mars in the middle of the shining shield is graved, and strides along the liquid field. The deer results from heaven with swift descent, and discord dyed in blood with garments rent. Divides the breeze, her steps Bellona treads, and shakes her iron rod above their heads. This seen Apollo from his Actian height pours down his arrows, at whose winged flight the trembling Indians and Egyptians yield, and soft Sabines quit the watery field. The fatal mistress hoists her silken sails, and shrinking from the fight invokes the gales. Aghast she looks, and heaves her breast for breath, panting and pale with fear of future death. The god had figur'd her as driving along by winds and waves, and scudding through the throng. Just opposite, sad Nilus opens wide his arms and ample bosom to the tide, and spreads his mantle over the winding coast, in which he wraps his queen and hides the flying host. The victor to the gods his thanks express'd, and Rome triumphant with his presence bless'd. 300 temples in the town he plac'd, with spoils and altars every temple grac'd. 3 shining nights and 3 succeeding days, the fields resound with shouts, the streets with praise, the domes with songs, the theatres with plays. All altars flame, before each altar lies, drench'd in his gore, the destined sacrifice. Great Caesar sits sublime upon his throne, before Apollo's porch of Parian stone, accepts the presents vow'd for victory, and hangs the monumental crowns on high. Vast crowds of vanquish'd nations march along, various in arms, in habit, and in tongue. Here Mulciber assigns the proper place for Carians and the ungirt Numidian race. Then ranks the Thracians in the second row, with Scythians expert in the dart and bow. And here the tamed Euphrates humbly glides, and there the Rhine submits her swelling tides. And proud Araxes, whom no bridge could bind, the Danes' unconquered offspring march behind, and Morini the last of humankind. These figures on the shield divinely wrought, by Vulcan labour'd and by Venus brought, with joy and wonder fill'd the hero's thought. Unknown the names, he yet admires the grace, and bears aloft the fame and fortune of his race. End of Book 8. Read by Lars Rolander. 29, Part 1 of the Aeneid. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Lars Rolander. While these affairs in distant places passed, the various heirs Juno sends with haste to find bold Turnus, who with anxious thought the secret shade of his great grandsire sought. Retir'd alone, she found the daring man, and oped her rosy lips, and thus began: "What none of all the gods could grant thy vows, that Turnus this auspicious day bestows. Aeneas, gone to seek th' Arcadian prince, has left the Trojan camp without defence, and, short of succours there, employs his pains in parts remote to raise the Tuscan swains. Now snatch an hour that favours thy designs, unite thy forces, and attack their lines." This said, on equal wings she pois'd her weight, and form'd a radiant rainbow in her flight. The Daunian hero lifts his hands, eyes, and thus invokes the goddess as she flies: "Iris, the grace of heav'n, what pow'r divine has sent thee down thro' dusky clouds to shine? See, they divide, immortal day appears, and glitt'ring planets dancing in their spheres. With joy these happy omens I obey, and follow to the war the god that leads the way." Thus having said, as by the brook he stood, he scoop'd the water from the crystal flood. Then with his hands the drops to heav'n he throws, and loads the powers above of the woes. Now march the bold confederates through the plain, well horsed, well clad, a rich and shining train. Messapus leads the van, and in the rear the sons of Tyrrheus in bright arms appear. In the main battle, with his flaming crest, the mighty Turnus towers above the rest. Silent they move majestically slow, like ebbing Nile or Ganges in his flow. The Trojans view the dusty cloud from far, and the dark menace of the distant war. Caicus from the rampire saw it rise, blackening the fields and thickening through the skies. Then to his fellows thus aloud he calls: "What rolling clouds, my friends, approach the walls? Arm, arm, and man the works, prepare your spears, and pointed darts the Latian host appears." Thus warn'd, they shut their gates, with shouts ascend the bulwarks, and secure their foes attend. For their wise general, with foreseeing care, had charged them not to tempt the doubtful war, nor, though provoked, in open fields advance, but close within their lines attend their chance. Unwilling, yet they keep the strict command, and sorely await in arms the hostile band. The fiery Turnus flew before the rest, piebald steed of Thracian strain he press'd. His helm of massy gold, and crimson was his crest. With 20 horse to second his designs, an unexpected foe he faced the lines. "Is there," he said, "in arms, who bravely dare his leader honour and his danger share?" Then spurring on, his brandish'd dart he threw, in sign of war applauding shouts ensue. Amazed to find a dastard race that run behind the rampires and the battle shun, he rides around the camp with rolling eyes, and stops at every post and every passage tries. So roams the nightly wolf about the fold, wet with descending showers and stiff with cold. He howls for hunger, and he grins for pain; his gnashing teeth are exercised in vain, and impotent of anger finds no way in his distended paws to grasp the prey. The mothers listen, but the bleating lambs securely swig the dug beneath the dams. Thus ranges eager Turnus o'er the plain, sharp with desire, and furious with disdain. So weighs each passage with a piercing sight, to force his foes in equal field to fight. Thus while he gazes round, at length he spies, where fenc'd with strong redoubts their navy lies. Close underneath the walls the washing tide secures from all approach this weaker side. He takes the wish'd occasion, fills his hand with ready fires, and shakes a flaming brand. Urged by his presence, every soul is warm'd, and every hand with kindled fires is arm'd. From the fir'd pines the scattering sparkles fly, fat vapours mix'd with flames involve the sky. What power, O Muses, could avert the flame which threaten'd in the fleet the Trojan name? Tell, for the fact, thro' length of time obscure, is hard to faith, yet shall the fame endure. 'Tis said that when the chief prepar'd his flight, and fell'd his timber from Mount Ida's height, the grandam goddess then approach'd her son, and with a mother's majesty begun. "Grant me," she said, "the sole request I bring, since conquer'd heav'n has own'd you for its king. On Ida's brows for ages past there stood, with firs and maples fill'd, a shady wood, and on the summit rose a sacred grove, where I was worshipp'd with religious love. Those woods, that holy grove, my long delight, I gave the Trojan prince to speed his flight. Now, fill'd with fear, on their behalf I come. Let neither winds o'erset nor waves intomb the floating forests of the sacred pine, but let it be their safety to be mine." Then thus replied her awful son, who rolls the radiant stars, and heav'n and earth controls: "How dare you, mother, endless date demand For vessels moulded by a mortal hand? What then is fate? Shall bold Aeneas ride, Of safety certain, on th' uncertain tide? Yet what I can, I grant. When wafted o'er, the chief is landed on the Latian shore. Whatever ships escape the raging storms, At my command shall change their fading forms To nymphs divine, and plow the wat'ry way, Like Dotis and the daughters of the sea. To seal this sacred vow, by Styx he swore The lake of liquid pitch, the dreary shore, And Phlegethon's innavigable flood, And the black regions of his brother god. He said, and shook the skies with his imperial nod. And now at length the number'd hours were come, Prefix'd by fate's irrevocable doom, When the great mother of the gods was free To save her ships, and finish Jove's decree. First, from the quarter of the morn there sprung A light that sign'd the heavens, and shots along. Then from a cloud fring'd round with golden fires Were timbrels heard, and Berecynthian choirs. And last, a voice with more than mortal sounds Both hosts in arm'd oppos'd, with equal horror wounds. "O Trojan race, your needless aid forbear, And know my ships are my peculiar care. With greater ease the bold Rutulian may With hissing brands attempt to burn the sea. Then singe my sacred pines; but you may charge, Loos'd from your crooked anchors, launch at large. Exalted each a nymph, forsake the sand, And swim the seas at Cybele's command." No sooner had the goddess ceas'd to speak, When lo! the obedient ships their hawsers break, And strange to tell, like dolphins in the main, They plunge their prows, and dive and spring again. As many beauteous maids the billows sweep, As rode before tall vessels on the deep. The foes surpris'd with wonder stood agaze, Messapus curb his fiery coursers haste. Old Tiber roar'd, and raising up his head, Call'd back his waters to their oozy bed. Turnus alone undaunted bore the shock, And with these words his trembling troops bespoke: "These monsters for the Trojans' fate are meant, And are, by Jove, for black presages sent." He takes the cowards' last relief away, For fly they cannot, and, constrain'd to stay, Must yield unfought a base inglorious prey. The liquid half of all the globe is lost; Heav'n shuts the seas, and we secure the coast. Theirs is no more than that small spot of ground Which myriads of our martial men surround. Their fates I fear not, or vain oracles. 'Twas given to Venus they should cross the seas, and land secure upon the Latian plains. Their promis'd hour is past, and mine remains. 'Tis in the fate of Turnus to destroy, with sword and fire, the faithless race of Troy. Shall such affronts as these alone inflame the Grecian brothers and the Grecian name? My cause and theirs is one, a fatal strife, and final ruin for a ravish'd wife. Was't not enough that, punish'd for the crime, they fell, but will they fall a second time? One would have thought they paid enough before, to curse the costly sex, and durst offend no more. Can they securely trust their feeble wall? A slight partition, a thin interval, betwixt their fate and them, when Troy thou will, by hands divine, yet perish'd by their guilt. Lend me for once, my friends, your valiant hands, to force from out their lines these dastard bands. Less than 1,000 ships will end this war, nor Vulcan needs his fated arms prepare. Let all the Tuscans, all the Arcadians join, nor these nor those shall frustrate my design. Let them not fear the treasons of the night, the robb'd Palladium, the pretended flight. Our onset shall be made in open light, no wooden engine shall their town betray. Fires they shall have around, but fires by day. No Grecian babes before their camp appear, whom Hector's arms detain to the 10th tardy year. Now, since the sun is rolling to the west, give we the silent night to needful rest. Refresh your bodies and your arms prepare, the morn shall end the small remains of wear. The post of honour to Messapus falls, to keep the nightly guards, to watch the walls, to pitch the fires at distances around, and close the Trojans in their scanty ground. Twice 7 Rutulian captains ready stand, and twice 700 horse these chiefs command. All clad in shining arms the works invest, each with a radiant helm and waving crest. Stretch'd at their length they press the grassy ground, they laugh, they sing, the jolly boats go round. With lights and cheerful fires renew the day, and pass the wakeful night in feasts and play. The Trojans from above their foes beheld, and with arm'd legions all the rampires filled. Seiz'd with affright, their gates they first explore, join'd works to works with bridges tower to tower. Thus all things needful for defence abound. Mnestus and brave Serestus walk'd around, commission'd by their absent prince to share the common danger and divide the care. The soldiers draw their lots, and as they fall, by turns relieve each other on the wall. Nigh where the foes their utmost guards advance, to watch the gate was warlike Nisus' chance. His father Hyrtacus of noble blood, his mother was a huntress on the wood, and sent him to the wars. Well could he bear his lance in fight, and dart the flying spear, but better skill'd unerring shafts to send. Beside him stood Euryalus his friend. Euryalus, then, whom the Trojan host no fairer face or sweeter air could boast. Scarce had the down to shade his cheeks begun, one was their care, and their delight was one. One common hazard in the war they shared, and now were both by choice upon the guard. Then Nisus thus: "Or do the gods inspire this warmth, or make we gods of our desire? A gen'rous ardour boils within my breast, eager of action, enemy to rest. This urges me to fight, and fires my mind to leave a memorable name behind. Thou seest the foe secure, how faintly shine their scatter'd fires, the most in sleep supine. Along the ground an easy conquests lie, the wakeful few a fuming flagon ply. All hush'd around, now hear what I revolve, a thought unripe, and scarcely yet resolv'd. Our absent prince both camp and council mourn, by message both would hasten his return. If they confer what I demand on thee, for fame is recompense enough for me. Methinks beneath yon hill I have espied a way that safely will my passage guide." Euryalus stood listening while he spoke, with love of praise and noble envy struck. Then to his ardent friend expos'd his mind: "All this alone, and leaving me behind! Am I unworthy, Nisus, to be join'd? Thinkest thou I can share of glory yield, Or send thee unassisted to the field? Not so: my father taught my childhood arms, Born in a siege, and bred among alarms. Nor is my youth unworthy of my friend, Nor of the heav'n-born hero I attend. The thing call'd life with ease I can disclaim, And think it oversold to purchase fame." Then Nisus thus: "Alas, thy tender years Would minister new matter to my fears. So may the gods, who view this friendly strife, Restore me to thy lov'd embrace with life. Condemn'd to pay my vows, as sure I trust, This thy request is cruel and unjust. But if some chance, as many chances are, And doubtful hazards in the deeds of war, If one should reach my head, there let it fall, And spare thy life, I would not perish all. Thy bloomy youth deserves a longer day. Live thou to mourn thy love's unhappy fate, To bear my mangled body from the foe, Or bide back and funeral rites bestow. Or if hard fortune shall those dues deny, Thou canst at least an empty tomb supply. O let not me the widow's tears renew, Nor let a mother's curse my name pursue. Thy pious parents, who, for love of thee, Forsook the coast of friendly Sicily, Her age committing to the seas and wind, When every weary matron stay'd behind. To this Euryalus: "You plead in vain, And but protract a cause you cannot gain. No more delays, but haste." With that he wakes the nodding watch, each of his office takes. The guard reliev'd, the generous couple went To find the council at the royal tent. All creatures else forgot their daily care, And sleep the common gift of nature share. Except the Trojan peers, who wakeful sate In nightly council for th' endanger'd state. They wrote a message to their absent chief, Shew their distress, and beg a swift relief. Amid the camp a silent seat they chose, Remote from clamour, and secure from foes. On their left arms their ample shields they bear, The right reclin'd upon the bending spear. Now Nisus and his friend approach the guard, And beg admission, eager to be heard. Th' affair important, not to be deferr'd, Ascanius bids 'em be conducted in, Ordering the more experienc'd to begin. Then Nisus thus: "Ye fathers, lend your ears, Nor judge our bold attempt beyond our years. The foe, securely drench'd in sleep and wine, Neglect their watch; the fires but thinly shine, And where the smoke in cloudy vapours flies, Cov'ring the plain, and curling to the skies. Betwixt two paths, which at the gate divide, Close by the sea, a passage we have spied, Which will our way to great Aeneas guide. Expect each hour to see him safe again, Loaded with spoils of foes in battle slain. Snatch we the lucky minute while we may, Nor can we be mistaken in the way. For hunting in the vale we both have seen The rising turrets and the stream between, And know the winding course with ev'ry ford." He ceas'd, and old Alethes took the word: "Our country gods, in whom our trust we place, Will yet from ruin save the Trojan race, While we behold such dauntless worth appear In dawning youth, and souls so void of fear." Then into tears of joy the father broke, Each in his longing arms by turns he took, Panted, and paus'd, and thus again he spoke: "Ye brave young men, what equal gifts can we In recompense of such desert decree? The greatest, sure, and best you can receive, The gods and your own conscious worth will give. The rest our grateful general will bestow, And young Ascanius till his manhood owe. And I, whose welfare in my father lies," Ascanius adds, "by the great deities, By my dear country, by my household gods, by hoary Vestas' rites and dark abodes, adjure you both, on you my fortune stands, that and my faith I plight into your hands. Make me but happy in his safe return, whose wonted presence I can only mourn. Your common gift shall 2 large goblets be, of silver wrought with purest imagery, and high embossed, which, when old Priam reigned, my conqu'ring sire at sacked Areciba gained. And more, 2 tripods cast in antique mould, with 2 great talents of the finest gold, beside a costly bowl engraved with art, which Dido gave, when first he gave her heart. But if in conquered Italy we reign, when spoils by lot the victor shall obtain, thou saw'st the courser by proud Turnus press'd, that Nisus and his arms and nodding crest, and shield from chance exempt, shall be thy share. 12 lab'ring slaves, 12 handmaids young and fair, all clad in rich attire, and train'd with care. And last, a Latian field with fruitful plains, and a large portion of the king's domains. But thou, whose years are more to mine allied, no fate my vow'd affection shall divide. From thee, heroic youth, be fully mine, take full possession, all my soul is thine. One faith, one fame, one fate shall both attend, my life's companion and my bosom friend. My peace shall be committed to thy care, and to thy conduct my concerns inware. Then thus the young Euryalus replied: Whatever fortune, good or bad, betide, the same shall be my age as now my youth. No time shall find me wanting to my truth. This only from your goodness let me gain, and this ungranted, all rewards are vain. Of Priam's royal race my mother came, and sure the best that ever bore the name, whom neither Troy nor Sicily could hold, from me departing, but o'erspent and old. My fate she followed, ignorant of this, whatever danger, neither parting kiss, nor pious blessing taking, her I leave, and in this only act of all my life deceive. By this right hand and conscious life I swear, my soul so sad a farewell could not bear. Be you her comfort, fill my vacant place, permit me to presume so great a grace. Support her age, forsaken and distress'd, that hope alone will fortify my breast. Against the worst of fortunes and of fears, he said, the moved assistants melt in tears. Then thus Ascanius wonder-struck to see that image of his filial piety. So great beginnings, in so green an age, exact the faith which I again engage. Thy mother all the dues shall justly claim. Creusa had, and only want the name. Whatever event thy bold attempt shall have, 'tis merit to have borne a son so brave. Now by my head a sacred oath I swear, my father used it, what returning here, crown'd with success, I for thyself prepare, that if thou fail, shall thy lov'd mother share. He said, and weeping while he spoke the word, from his broad belt he drew a shining sword, magnificent with gold Lycaon made, and in an ivory scabbard sheathed the blade. This was his gift, great Mnestheus gave his friend, a lion's hide his body to defend. And good Alethes furnish'd him beside with his own trusty helm, of temper tried. Thus arm'd they went. The noble Trojans wait their issuing forth, and follow to the gate. With prayers and vows above the rest appears Ascanius, manly far beyond his years, and messages committed to their care, which all in winds were lost and flitting air. The trenches first they pass'd, then took their way where their proud foes in pitched pavilions lay. Too many fatal ere themselves were slain, they found the careless host dispers'd upon the plain, who gorg'd and drunk with wine supinely snore. Unharness'd chariots stand along the shore. Amidst the wheels and reins the goblets by, a medley of debauch and war they lie. Observing Nisus, shew'd his friend the sight. Behold, a conquest gain'd without a fight! Occasion offers, and I stand prepared. There lies our way. Be thou upon the guard, and look around while I securely go, and you a passage thro' the sleeping foe." Softly he spoke, then striding took his way, with his drawn sword where haughty Rhamnes lay, his head raised high on tapestry beneath, and heaving from his breast he drew his breath. A king and prophet by King Turnus loved, but fate by prescience cannot be removed. Him and his sleeping slaves he slew, then spies where Remus with his rich retinue lies. His armour-bearer first, and next he kills his charioteer entrenched betwixt the wheels, and his loved horses last invades their lord. Full on his neck he drives the fatal sword. The gasping head flies off, a purple flood flows from the trunk that welters in the blood, which by the spurning heels dispersed around the bed besprinkles and bedews the ground. Lamus the bold and Lamyrus the strong he slew, and then Serranus fair and young. From dice and wine the youth retired to rest, and puffed the fumy god from out his breast. Even then he dreamt of drink and lucky play, more lucky had it lasted till the day. The famish'd lion thus, with hunger bold, o'erleaps the fences of the nightly foe, and tears the peaceful flocks with silent awe. Trembling they lie, and pant beneath his paw. Nor with less rage Euryalus employs the wrathful sword, or fewer foes destroys. But on the noble crowd his fury flew. He Phadus, Hebesus, and Rhoetus slew. Oppress'd with heavy sleep the former fell, but Rhoetus wakeful, and observing all, behind a spacious jar he slinked for fear. The fatal iron found, and reach'd him there. For, as he rose, it pierced his naked side, and reeking thence return'd in crimson dye. The wound pours out a stream of wine and blood, the purple soul comes floating in the flood. Now, where Messapus' quarter they arrive, the fires were fainting there, and just alive. The warrior horses, tied in order, fed. Nisus observed the discipline, and said: "Our eager thirst of blood may both betray, and see the scatter'd streaks of dawning day. Foe to nocturnal thefts, no more, my friend. Here let our glutted execution end. A lane thro' slaughter'd bodies we have made. The bold Euryalus, though loath, obey'd. Of arms and arras and of plate they find a precious load, but these they leave behind. Yet, fond of gaudy spoils, the boy would stay to make the rich caparison his prey, which on the steed of conquer'd Rhamnes lay. Nor did his eyes less longingly behold the girdle belt with nails of burnish'd gold. This present Caedicus the rich bestow'd on Remulus, when friendship first they vow'd, and absent join'd in hospitable ties, he dying to his heir bequeath'd the prize. Till by the conqu'ring Ardean troops oppress'd, he fell, and they the glorious gift possess'd. These glitt'ring spoils now made the victor's gain, he to his body suits, but suits in vain. Messapus' helm he finds among rest, and laces on, and wears the waving crest. Proud of their conquest, prouder of their prey, they leave the camp, and take the ready way. End of Book 9, Part 1. Read by Lars Rolander.
Yeah.